So hi, here we are again to talk about some of the things that we find that are beneficial in the treatment of chronic pain and chronic disease processes. I'm Dr. Martin Rutherford. I'm not a board certified. I am a certified functional medicine practitioner in the state of Nevada. Dr. Gates is
a board certified chiropractic neurologist.
And we work together. We work together as a team. We've had a practice that has kind of morphed on its own into a chronic pain, chronic disease practice. It's been a very interesting evolution, and what we do in these days is to share with you what we've seen, and based on what we have utilized over the years, based on things that we've tried and have worked, and different types of protocols and that we have tried and that have not worked and eliminated, and so we're just kind of sharing you some of the inside skinny on what seems to work. And there's a lot of generalities out there in the world from people trying to sell products and supplements as the miracle be all, and if you have chronic pain and chronic disease, there's probably not one product that is going to be the miracle for you. But we're going to talk about a product today, or basically an antioxidant called glutathione. We're going to talk about the benefits of glutathione, but we're also going to talk about the problems that people will run into with supplementation. Frequently in doing our consults, one of the things that I'm looking for is what the patient has tried and what has worked and what hasn't worked for them. It gives us an insight into some of the mechanisms that might be involved in their particular chronic pain issue. And sometimes I'll see all of our patients will have written down all the drugs that they're taking and all of the supplements that they're taking, and I'll go through them and say, so how did the glutathione work? And, some will say, well, we're pretty good. Others will say, well, you know, it really didn't do anything for me. And there could be a number of reasons why it didn't do anything for them, and we're going to be discussing a number of those reasons over the next 30 or 40 or 45 or 60 minutes or whatever it is that it takes us to cover the subject. So glutathione is a very, very powerful antioxidant. It's one of the most powerful antioxidants known to man, and we make it in our own bodies and in our own cells. So I find that very fascinating, that we're continually looking for things outside of us. Sometimes we need that. But in the autoimmune patient, which frequently is our chronic pain patient, your body kind of can't make it. And Dr. Gates is going to talk about that, I think, in quite a bit more expansively than what I just got done saying, but I just trying to kind of set the scene for you. So I guess first thing would be to maybe go into a little expanded version of what is glutathione, where does it come from, why is it important?
Absolutely.
And I'm going to defer to Dr. Gates for that, because he's done the lion's share of, well, probably all of the investigations of that. I've been to some classes on glutathione done by Dr. Karazian, Dr. Detoxification, of the why do I still have thyroid symptoms if my blood tests are normal thing. But why don't you go ahead and run with, you know, what it is and why it can be so important to our health, and ultimately will morph into why it's so important in our world relative to treatment protocols.
So technically, glutathione is a combination of amino acids. Just know that those are little building blocks of proteins. And importantly, it has sulfur on it. My biochemistry teacher said that sulfur is the most important element on the face of the planet, because sulfur can take on the effects of reactive oxygenated species. Now you're probably saying, what is that? All that means is everybody hears about antioxidants. We use antioxidants to combat these reactive oxygenated species. Basically, they're inflammatory. That's all you need to know. So glutathione is one of our most powerful substances in our body, because from a molecular standpoint, it can take on inflammation basically better than any other product in our experience on the face of the planet.
And if it takes on inflammation, what is the benefit to the patient?
The benefit can be substantial for a number of conditions, yeah, which we're going to go through. I mean, it just goes on and on, from neurodegenerative conditions where lots of times there's a lot of inflammation in brain cells or nerve cells out in the periphery, or in autoimmune conditions especially.
So if it takes it on, then it kind of takes it away from you, sort of, kind of makes it makes the inflammation dampen.
Right.
And it's powerful.
And we'll talk about it later on, but they're seen in some genetic conditions, for example, affecting the adrenal glands, or males who have problems with fertility. It can actually be due to either genetic inability to make glutathione or a lack of glutathione, because in making...
I don't know why you pointed to me when you said that.
But in making there was no inference there. But in making certain hormones in the body, it basically produces inflammation. That's what you have to know. Inflammation is going on in our body all the time, but it's all about the balance, and really it's all about the glutathione.
And I think we should hit that for a minute, because one of the things that I get so much when I'm interviewing patients, well, all you got to do is help me how to get rid of my inflammation. And and inflammation has become a huge marketing tool. You heard what Dr. Gates just got done saying. All of us have inflammation. It's a natural process in the body. It's actually a positive process when it's under control.
Absolutely. Killing infections, things like that.
Killing infections and things of that nature. So again, I'm not unlike cholesterol, which has got a really bad name, and I'm not going to get into that today, but inflammation has a bad name. But inflammation is a part of our 12-step program, our 12-step program, that's funny. Our 12 steps of evaluating a patient, one of those steps is evaluating infections and inflammation. But inflammation has been used to sell a lot of stuff today.
Yes, indeed.
And a lot of those things are antioxidants.
Yes.
And a lot of them work to different degrees, and a lot of them don't work to different degrees. And my observation is that they're all very expensive.
Right.
So as we walk through this, Dr. Gates is going to walk you a little bit more through that process. But the inflammation is with all of this. It gets out of control. It can be a piece of your puzzle. If you calm it down, you can feel better, but there's a little bit more to it than just drinking a juice or something along those lines. So what causes, so we have glutathione. Glutathione is a very powerful antioxidant. It takes on inflammation, thus calming it down so that you're not feeling it. And so we make glutathione.
We make glutathione in our own bodies, yes, absolutely.
Okay. And all of the cells.
Yeah, throughout our body.
And all of our cells.
And
my biochemistry teacher didn't tell me about sulfur, but maybe he didn't know that back in the early 1970s.
Well, I think I had the fortunate luxury of having a biochemistry teacher who went to Caltech, and he was basically in between jobs. To teach. This guy was Nobel Prize level. He was phenomenal. But glutathione is so important also because it helps to detoxify toxins out of our body. Now, everybody talks about detox. We did a whole hour on detox. But glutathione is quintessential, especially in getting rid of toxins that are lodged in your fat cells, things like heavy metals, other heavy compounds from pesticides, things like that. Glutathione is the factor in flushing that out of your system. And it's also involved in pathways in the liver that also do that. So not only will it pull things out of your fat cells, but it'll also help your liver to get things out of your body into your urine. So it's critically, critically important. They talk a lot about glutathione stores in certain drug reactions, because a lot of patients who take drugs and they may have a problem with their liver, it's because they don't have enough glutathione, whereas other people can just, we have patients come in here taking 20 medications, and it's like, how are you even functioning? Their liver is fine. Right. Because they have enough glutathione.
Because they have enough glutathione.
To get it out of their body, yeah.
And that's another point. Everybody thinks everybody's exactly the same. Well, I can take this supplement, I can take these drugs, why don't you take it? It helped me, why doesn't it help you? And there's so many different reasons, and glutathione is one of the key reasons why that occurs. Healthy liver is a good thing. So we have it in all our cells. The body kind of knows that we have inflammation all the time. It has this stopgap antioxidant, the most powerful antioxidant, my understanding, that is known currently, is made by our own cells. So what's the problem here? So I guess the next thing to go on to would be, what's the problem? What causes our cells to stop making glutathione? What causes one person to have enough and our liver not to be destroyed and the other one? Does this have to do with why people can drink more? Can drink more alcohol?
I haven't read that, but
okay.
quite possibly.
And what causes the depletion or the decreased glutathione in people who have decreased glutathione, like me?
And, you know, one of the interesting things they're saying is that the immune system can potentially chew it up when the immune system is out of control with autoimmune processes. We were going to do a talk on heavy metals 2-3 weeks ago. We deferred it because it's such a controversial issue and we didn't feel like we could present it well at this point in time. But one thing I will say is that exposure to heavy metals has been shown to deplete our body of glutathione because our body is trying to get rid of the heavy metal, and it just basically completely deprives our body of what we had in terms of glutathione. And then another aspect to depletion of glutathione is this phenomena of MTHFR gene abnormalities. MTHFR stands for methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, and that's just a fancy word that means you can't process B9 or folic acid appropriately. And so basically we're finding that some people have one genetic defect in their ability to have this enzyme, and other people have two genetic defects in their ability to have this enzyme that can process B9 or folic acid. The importance there is that if we lack MTHFR, and you can look it up, there's a lot of research on MTHFR relative to autism. If you lack MTHFR, then you're going to accumulate this really inflammatory mediator, is termed homocysteine. And if we accumulate homocysteine, that will also, with the MTHFR problem, not allow us to make enough glutathione. So there we get this process where we don't have glutathione and we have a lot of inflammation. And I don't know if I attached it today to our clipboard, but I attached it to my email, where there's an article out of a cardiovascular journal where they're saying that this process could be one of the pivotal roles in causing cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease because of the inflammation.
I had a doctor the other day. It was our friend, our local functional medicine psychiatrist, which is kind of an interesting thing. But he apparently is having people run the MTHFR gene for depression. So, and then this gentleman was positive, and we'll see how that goes.
It's a very, very big deal, absolutely. And we saw a case example of it. We still applaud that mother who brought this to our attention.
We blew this case. Just to tell you, we're telling you the real inside. This is how we learn. This is how you learn, through pain and through failure. This is how you learn.
And don't believe anybody who says they're perfect. Treating these conditions. And
for sure,
I think that's one of our strengths, and we learn from it. And basically, this young gentleman had a behavioral disorder, and it turned out that his MTHFR gene abnormality was really the thing that was causing his behavioral disorder. And once that was rectified through specific supplementation for B vitamins that his body didn't have to process, he was able to make his own glutathione, and he ended up doing really, really well. And so, yeah.
And at that point in time, we had not embraced the MTHFR. What we thought was a theory at the time, because we were getting pretty good results without it.
Absolutely, yeah.
But she went to another doctor. She told the other doctor what she'd been telling us for weeks. The other doctor said, okay, I'll try it. Kid had the problem. She gave him the supplements. The kid's problems that we had been trying to fix for a couple months were gone like that. So we now are abundantly aware of the fact that this is a clinically correct entity, the MTHFR gene. Yes. So so decreased depletion of glutathione. I mean, mostly we see it with autoimmune problems.
Mostly in neurodegenerative diseases, and again, it goes back to that balance. So maybe you have appropriate levels of glutathione.
What's a neurodegenerative?
Neurodegenerative conditions are things like Parkinson's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a very tough condition, but it's a neurodegenerative condition. Those are some of the main ones. There are others that I could go into.
But even we treat a lot of fibromyalgia. And if you have fibromyalgia, I'm not sure what you understand the definition of it to be, but we have seen autoimmune issues in virtually every fibromyalgia patient I think that has ever walked into this office. And so they're not making glutathione.
And really the factor goes back to that balance. So maybe they're making enough glutathione, but they have so much inflammation in their system due to autoimmune problems that glutathione just gets used up. And when we were doing our literature search this morning, it became abundantly clear that in so many autoimmune conditions, it's now being acknowledged that glutathione is deficient. And that's why many of you are watching this broadcast, because you've probably heard, take glutathione, it will make you feel better. Take glutathione, it'll shut off your inflammation. Take glutathione and your Crohn's disease will be improved. Well, we're going to get to the glutathione supplements, but just know that, yes, in our experience, supplementing with glutathione, especially the right form of glutathione, can produce some really significant changes. However, we do it after we have addressed the underlying immune inflammatory components as much as can possibly be done without drugs, without major interventions.
Right. So there's a lot of inflammation that's going on there. This is one of my pet peeves. It's like when people come in to me and go like, I got this, I got inflammation, I took this and I felt better. I'll say, okay, what was causing the inflammation?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Well, you're going to take it forever? Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. It's better than taking steroids, I guess,
right,
or whatever.
Yep,
but I guess much better than taking steroids. But the bottom line is where I was going to say to Dr. Gates, by the time we start getting involved in glutathione, we have done a very thorough history and exam. We put the patient on a very baseline diet to try to eliminate a lot of allergens and a lot of inflammation, if you will, anti-inflammatory diet. And so some of you may be utilizing the glutathione, and we're going to talk about that later on, and not having any result because you probably need to take 10 times more glutathione than they take.
Exactly.
Or you need to understand that inflammation is a natural body process and it's out of control for a reason. And let's maybe find out what the inflammatory issue is and take care of that instead of taking expensive $35 bottles of juices, which are fine. But you take them for a long time, and if the inflammatory process keeps going on, you either end up taking a lot more juice, or at some point, it ends up not working very well. So again, if you want to get to the true cause of the problem, you really need to look into the inflammation. But glutathione has been an amazing tool for us. We had a gal who came in yesterday who we hadn't seen for 3 years, and she was phenomenal, but she started not feeling good again. And in interviewing it was just really clear that her thyroid was starting to give a little bit, and she needed a little bit of fine tuning on that. But she was a complex problem, and she said yesterday, she said, that glutathione stuff you gave me, if I'm off it for 2 days, I really don't feel that well. Well, she still has a lot of inflammatory issues going on in there, so we're gonna have to see where that goes. But that's how you have to start thinking about all of your supplements, not just glutathione. I mean, if you're taking supplements, and I ask you, are they helping you? And you go, I don't know. They're not helping you. I'm telling you, it should be like drugs. People come in here and go, I'm not sure if my thyroid medication is helping me. That means it's not helping you. I mean, if you have a thyroid problem and you start taking medication for it, let me tell you, you should know within a few days. The most within a week or two. You should go, whoa, I feel better. I have more energy. The weight is coming off of me. My bowels are moving again. My skin is better. But people have been taking it for like years, and they go, well, I don't know if it's working. You should learn to expect some sort of a result, or you're just throwing your money away. And there's a lot of variation in physiology of people that will cause things to work and not work. There's a lot of variation in the supplements and or the drugs themselves. I mean, I have people come in and go, I took this drug, then I went off the market, now I have to take the generic name, and now it doesn't work. Thyroid, I hear that with all the time.
Yeah.
So we talked about what causes decreased levels of glutathione. What causes? Is there such a thing as too much glutathione?
I don't know if there's too much glutathione that I've read, but they are now showing that high doses of vitamin C will increase glutathione levels, which is an interesting point. Dr. Rutherford and I have talked about recently how Reno, where we practice, is a mecca for alternative practitioners.
Has been. When I got here in 1980, we had a very famous clinic here. In fact, it's still here. It's gone through many evolutions, and they treated a lot of cancer, alternative cancer. But at that time they were allowed to do Laetrile, which no one else in the country was allowed to do. And I'm not commenting on Laetrile one way or the other. I'm just saying that when I got here, here's this little Reno. There was only 35,000 people here when I got here. 35,000. I don't know how many there is now. It's got to be like 400, 500,000 or something like that. So it's small. And yet we have people flying here from all over the world to the alternative doctors here. And Laetrile was one of the big things, but still, chelation therapy was big even then. And these are things that weren't allowed to be done anywhere else in the United States. Of course, Reno, we used to have, at that time, it was the divorce capital of the world. We were the only ones that were allowed to do. We were the only ones that were allowed to do casinos at the time, and we had legalized prostitution. So you could see how alternative care probably fit into that model. But the reality is that's what Reno was in 1980, and this was true. I thought it was funny when I got here. I thought this is kind of a weird deal. What's that all about? But when you think about it, it was all like different than what was going on in all the other states. Where Nevada was a pretty wide open state at that point in time, and they allowed a lot of things. There was no population here. Vegas practically didn't exist at that time. It was a pretty small place too.
Wow.
There was no Vegas Strip, and they were even deciding whether they wanted to do a Vegas Strip. So Reno was looking for whatever it could to make a living. So they went to the vices, and then they went to the alternative to correct all the things that the vices were causing. I think that's kind of how it worked. But anyway, so we.
Well, I don't even know where I was going with that now. I'm kidding.
We were talking about increased.
Right.
We were talking about increased vitamin C, and we were talking about how this was a mecca.
Exactly.
For alternative care. And
so now it's a standard. We don't do cancer here, for the record, but we know other practitioners who do, and these are medical doctors who use chemotherapies, but they also use vitamins. And a common part of the treatment plan that we see across many of these practitioners is high-dose vitamin C for their cancer patients and autoimmune patients. And it was interesting to see some articles this morning where they're talking about how the vitamin C really increases glutathione. Now, lots of times in those vitamin C drips, glutathione is included. And we do work with medical doctors who do glutathione IVs. We will talk about that later on. Okay. But the vitamin C does seem to increase glutathione stores in the body pretty readily. But now we'll go on to...
So you wanted to talk about conditions in which glutathione is decreased. And I think we mentioned, maybe I let the cat out of the bag by mentioning what I think is the main one, which is autoimmune problems. Mm-hmm. But I think you want to take it a little bit farther than that.
Yeah, absolutely. With autoimmune problems
is 90% of our practice.
Yeah, and basically with autoimmune disease, it shouldn't be happening. We have millions of checks and balances to make sure that our immune system never attacks us. Those checks and balances seem to be breaking down incredibly frequently in the American population.
This is a new evolution.
Yeah.
This is a new thing. It's probably been evolving for the last 20 or 30 years.
Mm-hmm. And some statistics will vary. It depends on how many autoimmune conditions they count into their statistics. For example, if they only say 12 autoimmune diseases, a certain percent of the population will have those. But when you factor in all the autoimmune diseases, the current estimates are somewhere like 1 in 6 Americans have an autoimmune problem, which is just unbelievable. And the reason why that seems to be happening is that once the immune system gets out of control and starts to attack us, and it can happen for a variety of reasons. Watch our autoimmune hangout or broadcast. But once the immune system gets out of control, it's like a forest fire, and it keeps itself in business. So this immune system that becomes like an evil dictator starts producing other little immune cells that keep that process going, whereas it never should have been happening in the first place. And glutathione is kind of the good avenger, where glutathione is one of those things that tries to come in and shut off this evil dictator. And that's where we see in our autoimmune patients, in our opinion, that glutathione can be pretty effective in calming down some of the autoimmune responses, depending on the method of delivery. But conditions that involve too little glutathione, they're talking about it in stroke patients, because there's a lot of inflammation associated with the events hours after a stroke. They're talking about it in concussions. We have a concussion patient right now who we've loaded up on glutathione after we've taken him through all of our protocols to decrease inflammation, as well as some lipid stabilizing factors, meaning factors that stabilize his brain's ability to make energy, and he is just doing phenomenal with that. It's talked about in the MS literature. It's talked about, like I talked about, with those congenital conditions affecting the adrenal glands, where we make cortisol from, and adrenaline. Males who have immobility problem, it's talked about all the autoimmune disorders, like we talked about Crohn's, lupus, things of that nature. Neurodegenerative conditions, we talked about Parkinson's, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis to a lesser degree. we can go on about neurodegenerative conditions, but basically conditions where the neurons start to dysfunction, they basically die. Things like Alzheimer's, you might be familiar with. And autism. Autism is another major one where glutathione is deficient.
And again, it can be powerful, but you need to also kind of combine it with, well, in different people.
In our opinion.
In different people. Some people.
Because that's the point. You may not need glutathione.
Right.
You're out there watching this broadcast saying,
right.
okay, what's the best glutathione supplement? You may not need glutathione if you actually handle the process correctly and shut down your immune system or calm it down to where it should be, fix all the other inflammatory processes.
Our goal with a chronic pain patient or a chronic disease patient is to figure that we have kind of a protocol that has now been developed over a period of probably the last 6 or 7 years, something like that. And in essence, the protocol is designed to put the patient through a number of steps to determine what is and what is not contributing to creating their unique set of pain symptoms. And sometimes inflammation isn't a part of it. Or sometimes you will remove other issues and the inflammation will calm down. And you don't need we don't give glutathione to all of our patients, and we don't want you to get that impression that this is a tool in our arsenal. What our goal is and our motto is less is more, because most chronic patients have an autoimmune problem. Dr. Gates talks about 1 in 6 people. Those are the ones that if they took all the ones that they know have autoimmune problems and put it in there, it's 1 in 6. Well, what about the zillions of people out there with hypothyroid problems, and 95% of you have autoimmune attacks on your thyroid, and probably a very small percentage of you know that. And so if you start morphing that in there, I actually think it's probably more than 1 in 6. 1 in 6 is stunning. It's stunning to say that 1 in 6 people are walking around out there with some sort of an autoimmune problem, but it's probably more. But 1 in 6 is enough. 1 in 6 is stunning. But so the bottom line is there's a lot of unknowns. We try to walk people through this, and with different methods, try to tease out, even if that person doesn't come in with a diagnosed autoimmune problem, or maybe the test doesn't show an autoimmune problem, we can still kind of tease it out by trying different things, different supplements, and so on and so forth to determine whether it calms down that immune system or whether the inflammation goes away or whatever. And I said all this to build, to say, what we try to do is build a protocol that when the patient's done, they can do as little as possible, whether it's supplements or diet, to be able to maintain it. Because if you're having to take 100 vitamins a day and you're having to follow a diet that has nothing fun to eat in it, the chance of you complying is very little. Chance of you coming back in is very high. So, but glutathione is it's a key player in a lot of things, but not everybody needs it. I wouldn't even know what percentage needs it. I don't know what you were going to use when you were. It sounds like you were going to refer to that case that we have going right now. Was that going to be now or later?
We'll talk about that with the
supplements. Yeah. Well, we're probably there.
Yeah.
So that was also kind of a semi lead into the supplements. Now look, you have to understand what we have. I have all this stuff. Those of you who have watched any of this before know I have virtually everything we've ever treated in this office, short of migraines or dizziness or vertigo. But I have fibromyalgia and peripheral neuropathy. I guess you have to say I have it, huh? Because I still have it, but I'm like 95% better. And then I had chronic fatigue, and I don't have fatigue anymore. And celiac, that's pretty much under control. Autoimmune attack on your gut, so you can't eat gluten. That's another whole hangout you can look up. And Hashimoto's, thyroiditis. I have an attack on my thyroid, all confirmed by testing and all that type of stuff. But I take probably more supplements than most of the patients do. But I had it for a long time, not knowing I had any of it really. But I don't take as many as I would, because I went to one of the local alternative practitioners prior to this, and a great guy, and I'm not going to mention his name because it's going to sound negative and it's not meant to be, but his method is more of an acute pain model, even though he's dealing with a lot of chronic pain. So I had like, well, I've got 2 guys here, and both of them I came home with like bags of supplements, and I got worse. I mean, I had a lot worse. One, my face, the skin of my face started peeling off, and so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about supplements, and I'd like for us to kind of put some perspective on it, because we are totally what's the word I'm looking for? Conditioned into what's the test say, what's the drug, what's the supplement I need to do. We get a little bit more awareness about diet now, but there's just so much more to it, these chronic pain issues, than that. So glutathione supplements, the positives, I think we probably talked about the positives, but the pitfalls of the person who comes in here and says, well, I took it, didn't help me.
Right. And the thing with glutathione is that if you take glutathione itself, it's broken down in your gastrointestinal tract. They've done the studies. People were taking upwards of 3 grams of glutathione a day, which is a lot. That's probably the equivalent with some of our supplements to $15 a day of glutathione.
So broken down means
it doesn't get through your
it's
stomach.
not getting to where it needs to get.
So basically your stomach kills it, and then you can't use it in your body.
So it's like the same as not taking it.
And yeah, exactly. And then people came out and started using glutathione precursors. The main precursor used is N-acetylcysteine. And so
because those in theory are not broken down.
They're not broken down
in the GI tract,
right.
So then they're supposed to ultimately
get into your cells, and then your body can use that N-acetylcysteine to make its own glutathione. However, we use, oh my gosh,
we've used all this stuff.
We had patients taking tons of this stuff, and I will say clinically, we didn't see a result that often. Except for one patient who walked in yesterday.
Except for the patient who came in yesterday and said, if I don't take that thing, my pain comes over. Just as we were saying, how useless this stuff was. She walks in, but I want to say that.
Yeah.
That to show the wide variety of responses to these supplements. So
yeah, and
for the most part, we did not find those to be, across the board, we did not find that to be a useful product for us.
And then we started using this product, turned on by one of our medical doctor friends who does IV glutathione and feels that this is on par with that.
Did you mention
Oh, I didn't mention the cream. So we also use the cream.
Those are real popular.
Yeah, a glutathione cream. We're using that for
I did that because a lot of times
I
have a thyroid issue, and a lot of times they'll tell you to rub it on your thyroid, and that'll help. And it didn't help me. It didn't help any of our other patients either.
Yeah,
and it was expensive.
Yeah. And so then we went to using this one product. I think I can say a name, can't I? I can say a name of a product.
You can say whatever you want, yeah.
Zymogen glutathione is the
We're
product.
not connected with Zymogen.
We have no, here's our disclosure. We're not getting any money from Zymogen.
Full disclosure. And any of the products that we're mentioning to you, we're getting nothing from.
Yeah.
We're just trying to share with you what works, what doesn't work, the framework of where it works, and all that type of stuff.
Exactly. And basically, Zymogen, they chemically modified the glutathione so they can pass through the stomach. Now other companies have basically attached onto this idea, and there's liposomal glutathione, which I hear works well, but we just use the Zymogen, which does work well. But we also updose it when the time is right, after we've handled all these other inflammatory components.
We had a colleague of ours who is an osteopath who was working at the time in one of the top alternative cancer clinics in the country, which is here in Reno, Alternative Reno. And he told you that he found the Zymogen pretty much equal to doing it intravenously.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So the Zymogen is very, very powerful. However, you have to updose it, and it is expensive too. I mean, that has to be talked about. So in some circumstances, if cost is an issue, we may refer patients to a medical doctor, a couple medical doctors that we work with, who will look at putting patients on intramuscular injections of glutathione. You have tried nebulizing glutathione, where people basically inhale the glutathione. You guys had awful results.
Well, to be fair, I think we had awful results because we're in Reno. Not because of the prostitution and all that, okay? But because we're at 5,000 feet here, and we're in the high desert.
Right. It's very dry.
And one of the things we were having a problem with was people were becoming very irritated by inhaling it. But we did have awful results with it overall.
Well, and for all you COPD patients out there, they are talking about glutathione being nebulized as a treatment for that.
So maybe at sea level, that might work better for you. I've had colleagues who said it worked pretty well for them, but I couldn't I can't verify that.
And then we do have some patients that we refer to our medical colleagues for IV glutathione when there's a severe situation, and we've seen fantastic results with that as well in the more severe autoimmune patients. I mean, we're talking really severe patients.
Right.
And so that is kind of the spectrum of glutathione supplementation that we see. But basically, if you want to know, Zymogen is the product that we use for oral glutathione, and we just haven't seen the precursors to glutathione work as well. Working well is all a matter of perspective. You may be taking it and say, oh, I feel a little bit better, but we have patients who are coming here with major problems who are expecting to get better. So we really know where the rubber meets the road, because we conduct, in essence, research experiments weekly in determining what's the next factor that's going to allow us to help patients just a little better. So how can glutathione be used to help you? We would say in the right clinical situation, once all these other inflammatory mediators, if you've addressed them and you're still not to the point where you would like to be, glutathione may be something you want to consider to help your body combat inflammation, to help your body get rid of toxins, to help your body get rid of heavy metals, all those factors. That's how I'd say it'd be used.
Well, excuse me, dry desert. I'm getting a tickle in my throat. So we have a patient who's at the local Whole Foods. Nothing against Whole Foods at all. Any place that sells vitamins. We're at the local, any place that sells vitamins store. And you read about glutathione, and you listen to this, and you're standing in front of there going, here's the glutathione. What should they be thinking? Should they try it? Should they not try it? What? This is what people are looking at. This is what they're asking. This is all great. And now it's like now here's where the rubber meets the road. Rubber meets the road is like, do they try it? If they try it and it works, what does that mean? If they try it and it doesn't work, where would you go with that?
I would say if it were me, and if you were staring at Zymogen glutathione, and you have a problem. If I was looking at anything else, I wouldn't buy it. If it was me. That's all I'll say. But if I was looking at Zymogen glutathione on a shelf, I would buy it, and if I took it and I felt a little better, I would say I have an inflammatory process that was probably chewing up my glutathione and it's not completely out of control. But I would also know, in doing that I would probably be needing to take glutathione for my life.
And looking for what the inflammatory process is.
Right, and then I would say is basically, if you want to get to the underlying cause, you need to figure out what is causing your inflammation. Just as a little tidbit in our experience, usually it's the immune system. However, the immune system is a very complex area that can require a lot of testing to really figure out what's going on with it.
Most of our protocols are designed around exactly that.
Yeah. And then if I were to take the glutathione and not feel any different, then I would say I probably have some more significant inflammation in my body that's being created, likely from the immune system, maybe from your diet, and that those factors really need to be looked at first. We've talked about, we need to do a whole thing on omega-3s, I think. We talked about fish oil, but we need to talk about the American food supply, which is, when that cow goes to the feedlot, now it has 25, I don't want to exaggerate, it has 5 times more inflammatory fats in it than when it was eating grass out in the pasture. So those fats go into you, and then you're chewing on that delicious hamburger at your favorite fast food place, then you're having to take glutathione to combat what you had in the hamburger. Those are things you need to think about. And that is just one small example, I would say.
Yeah, and that's a good one. Because, again, people are starting, I know in my interviews with people, they are starting to get food. They're starting to get food's an issue. They're not liking it, but they're starting to get food's an issue that is creating problems. They're starting to get that their digestive tracts are something. It's the whole problem, but usually it's part of the problem. In fact, everything we're talking about are parts of addressing our types of patients, which are the fibromyalgia and the peripheral neuropathy and the chronic fatigue and the dizziness and vertigo and all the things that Dr. Gates mentioned. I mean, we don't treat cancer, and we're pretty selective about what we do treat relative to our kind of our screening process, because again, there's so many different variations of what can be happening in your metabolic chemistry and your brain chemistry that that sometimes you can tell a patient needs a lot more than glutathione or a diet or to fix their stomach or whatever to get better, or that patient may not. Maybe that patient might be a little bit too far gone. They may not be a candidate for what we do. So, but glutathione, it comes up a lot. We get a lot of questions about it. There's a lot of it in the literature. We have used it very successfully in a lot of cases, and we thought that it would be, actually Dr. Gates thought it would be a good subject for us to cover. And I think that probably, short of getting into the biochemistry of it, which he did briefly in the beginning, I think that pretty much covers the things that we find that patients are asking us about it, and then I'm hearing in the consults, and should they take it, should I not take it, should I go get the intravenous? Same thing, what he said, if you go get the intravenous and it's not working, you've really got a problem. You need to start searching for some other things that are going on. And I think that pretty much covers it. I think if I were a listener and I wanted to know exactly that, what do I do? Do I take it? Do I not take it? If I take it, what do I mean? I think we've covered that pretty well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So okay. I'm done.
I'm done too.
Okay. So from Reno, Nevada, the land of many alternative things, and not so unique anymore, I guess, all the gambling and all that other stuff, which I won't keep getting into. And the divorces now can be done anywhere, but we still have all that. We still have that reputation here. But from Reno, Nevada, at 5,000 feet in northern Nevada, I think we have completed that subject, and I hope you get something from it. And we'll try to come up with another interesting subject to cover for you next week.
And if you have any more questions, go to powerhealthtalk.com, or you can go to our Facebook page. Thanks for watching.